My friends, welcome. Today I'm going to take you on a journey through the life of one of history's greatest geniuses. With my own eyes, I've witnessed many monumental events and met numerous brilliant minds, but none were as awe-inspiring as Leonardo da Vinci. Imagine a man who is not just a painter, not just a scientist, and not just an engineer. He is all of these things. A wise man trying to unlock the secrets of nature, an artist who could capture the human spirit on canvas, and an inventor dreaming up the machines of the future. Today I'll share his story with you, but not in the dry way of a history book. No, my friends, this story will come alive in your minds, and you'll feel every detail. Now, let's take a moment to think. What if we closed our eyes and traveled back to the mid-15th century, to the lush hills of Italy? Leonardo was born in a small village near Florence, taking his last name from the very place of his birth. He opened his eyes to the world in Vinci, and that's where Da Vinci comes from. As he wandered through the narrow streets of his time, every stone and every flower he discovered planted seeds of curiosity in his young mind. Leonardo wasn't an ordinary child. From a young age, he had a passion for nature. He observed how clouds moved across the sky, how leaves trembled on the water, and the anatomy of animals. You know, those who knew him often said, "This boy is going to achieve great things," and indeed he did. But back then, no one could have predicted that his curiosity would shape the mind of a genius. Leonardo's father was a wealthy notary, while his mother was a peasant. He was born out of wedlock, which perhaps made his life a bit more challenging than that of other children. Yet, these struggles never stopped him. When his family decided to send him to apprentice with an artist, he eagerly picked up a brush and made his first touches on canvas. At that moment, the great artist within him began to awaken. Though still a young man, his observational skills were remarkably different from those of others. Leonardo wasn't just seeing, he was trying to uncover the deeper meanings behind everything he observed. Nature presented him with mysteries, and he used every tool at his disposal to solve them. Let's take a closer look. Back then, Florence was a hub of art and science. Great works were emerging from small workshops, and the city was alive with creativity and knowledge. When Leonardo entered the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio as a young apprentice, he was stepping into an entirely different world. Verrocchio was one of the most important artists of the time. Under his guidance, Leonardo didn't just learn to paint, he also gained knowledge in sculpture, architecture, and even engineering. To him, art encompassed every aspect of life. Even while painting, he thought like an engineer and considered the mathematics of nature while sculpting. My friends, I won't just tell you about this great genius's artistic side. Leonardo always sought more. He wanted to learn everything understanding nature, uncovering the secrets of the human body, and even dreaming of one day achieving flight. His mind was a vast universe. He constantly filled his notebooks with drawings, but these weren't just any sketches. He recorded everything, from the curves of a leaf to the flapping wings of birds. He blended science with art and delved into ideas that were far ahead of his time. Now, my friends, sit back and get ready to witness this extraordinary story. The tale of Leonardo's transformation from that small village into a genius who left his mark on world history starts right here. With every step he took, every brushstroke, and every scientific discovery will be with him. Leonardo was not just an artist, he was a sage. And so the journey of that great sage will begin here with all of you. My dear children, let's all head to that little, peaceful village together. Imagine a small, charming place in the heart of Italy, near Florence, called Vinci. It's a quaint little spot surrounded by hills, olive trees, and orchards. On a spring morning in 1452, a child was born in that land. This child would go on to change the world. His name was Leonardo. But back then, who could have known that a child growing up in nature's quiet embrace would one day be called a genius? Leonardo was born out of wedlock. His father, Ser Piero da Vinci, was a respected notary, and his mother, Caterina, was a humble peasant woman. They were from different worlds. His father was wealthy and influential, a man held in high regard in society. The relationship Leonardo had with his father would greatly shape his future. Ser Piero always supported him, but he never fully embraced him into his world. On the other hand, his mother, Caterina, taught him simplicity and how to connect with nature. Leonardo grew up learning from these two contrasting worlds, the aristocratic city life on one side and the pure, simple beauty of nature on the other. Little Leonardo didn't feel a sense of belonging in either the city or the village, but this uncertainty laid the groundwork for his genius, as he gathered bits and pieces from everything, constantly curious about the world. Nature became his first teacher. He would watch the light filtering through the olive leaves and marvel at the patterns created by raindrops falling on the ground. Sometimes he would sit by the river for hours, listening to the sound of water hitting the rocks. He found a rhythm in the movement of water and a harmony in the dance of the trees in the wind. For Leonardo, nature was not just a landscape, it was an endless mystery waiting to be explored. My friends, this is how Leonardo's childhood was shaped. Caught between his father's wealthy world as a notary and his mother's simple peasant life, but always embraced by nature. Instead of playing ordinary games like other children, he was trying to unravel the secrets of nature. Perhaps it was then that he first realized there was a system, an order behind everything. Why do the clouds move across the sky? How do birds fly? Why do trees grow? Leonardo's mind was filled with these questions. All he had to do was a child who didn't just see, he sought to understand. Now imagine how this little boy spent his days. Let's visualize it even if we can't see it with our own eyes. In the mornings, he might be in the city house for his father's work, and in the evenings, he'd be in the village with his mother, surrounded by nature. He lived in two different worlds, learning something new from each. His father's desk was cluttered with documents, calculations, contracts, but Leonardo focused not on the dry words on those pages, but on the movement of hands, the beauty of writing, and how ink spread across paper. He found great meaning in the small details. But his true magic was shaped by his relationship with nature. He would sit for hours in the gardens watching the birds. Their flights mesmerized him. He observed the movement of their wings and even at that young age, tried to figure out the secret of flight. Ah, dear friends, can you imagine young Leonardo looking up at the sky and dreaming of flying one day? And years later, he would design machines that would make that dream come true. This deep curiosity about nature in his childhood would inspire him throughout his life in every piece of art and invention he created. It's said that his mother, Caterina, nurtured this interest. She taught him the language of the earth and the sounds of nature. She may have been just a simple peasant woman, but the love for nature she instilled in him became one of the greatest driving forces behind his genius. Caterina allowed her son to explore nature. She neither restricted nor guided him. She simply let him follow his curiosity. Leonardo, in turn, understood nature more and more each day. Every leaf he picked up and every insect he observed in those years were signs of the great scientific work he would undertake later. As time went on, the curiosity inside Leonardo grew. It transformed into a passion that took him beyond the ordinary child. This young mind, striving to understand even the smallest pieces of nature, also began to step into the magical world of art. He started painting from a young age, but what he drew were not just images. For him, painting was a way to capture what he saw. Every piece he created had a story behind it, a mathematical order, a law of nature. Imagine a child who observes the world around him with such a unique perspective. Everything he drew with his small hands was the first spark of the great genius within him. He was not just a painter, he was a student of nature. Leonardo was always a wise man wanting to learn, striving to deeply understand everything he saw. And those first steps of that wise man were taken in the village where he was born, Invention. Between his father's chaotic city life and his mother's closeness to nature, Leonardo found his own path. Leonardo's passion for nature and art from such a young age would become two great loves he pursued throughout his life. And this passion showed itself not only in his art, but also in his scientific endeavors. He was a genius who combined art and science. For Leonardo, nature was not just a landscape to be painted, it was also an unknown to be discovered, and it was that unknown that would later transform him into a genius who would change the world. Ah, my friends, we've reached a turning point in Leonardo's life. Picture him stepping out of that peaceful village of Vinci and heading to Florence, the center of art and science. Imagine this young man walking through the narrow streets of Florence, filled with a deep curiosity and a passion for art. Back in those days, Florence was buzzing with creativity and knowledge. You could find a painter, a sculptor, or a philosopher at every corner. But the person who was truly waiting for Leonardo was Andrea del Verrocchio, one of the most famous artists of the time. Verrocchio wasn't just an artist, he was a true master. He dabbled in sculpture, painting, engineering, you name it, he had it all. When this master one day welcomed Leonardo into his workshop, it would change the fate of both Leonardo and the history of art. Leonardo was ready to discover how vast the art world was when he started his apprenticeship with Verrocchio at such a young age. Oh, my friends, just think about it. Verrocchio's workshop felt like magic. When you stepped through that door, you entered a world where brushes met canvas and sculptures came to life from stone. Leonardo was right there in the middle of it. At first, he might have been cleaning brushes or preparing color palettes, but his eyes were always on the great master's hands. Verrocchio's hands breathed life into every piece, and Leonardo was absorbing every detail in his mind. He wanted to learn not just how to make art, but the spirit behind it as well. It didn't take long for Verrocchio to notice Leonardo's talent. This young apprentice was different from the others. He wasn't just doing what he was told, he was trying to understand everything he worked on. Under Verrocchio's guidance, Leonardo's artistic vision began to take shape. For Leonardo, art wasn't just about seeing, he was always searching for more. When creating a portrait, he wanted to understand how muscles moved and the anatomical origins of the emotions in a facial expression. Under Verrocchio's mentorship, he developed this understanding and began merging art with science. Now, my friends, picture yourself spending a day in that workshop. Imagine Verrocchio working on a massive sculpture while Leonardo carefully held his brush. Every corner of the workshop was filled with different artworks, and the unifying power of art was palpable among the colors and shapes. Leonardo wasn't just learning to paint here, he was learning the subtleties of art, the language of colors, and the world of lines. And we can't forget Leonardo's contribution to one of Verrocchio's most famous pieces, the Baptism of Christ. Ah, dear friends, back in those days, young Leonardo worked alongside his master Verrocchio on this painting. It's said that Leonardo's talent was so impressive that after seeing a part he painted, Verrocchio never picked up a brush again. In that piece, Leonardo had painted the face of an angel. It was so delicate and emotional that the painting seemed to come alive. From that moment on, Leonardo's name began to be recognized not just as an apprentice but as an artist. So, what was Verrocchio's contribution to Leonardo? Oh, my friends, Verrocchio didn't just provide technical knowledge, he taught him that there were no limits in art. In Verrocchio's workshop, Leonardo sculpted statues, laid brush strokes on canvases, and learned how to combine art with science. Because it wasn't just about painting or sculpting, there were also mechanical and engineering projects happening there. The wonderful inventions and designs Leonardo would later create probably took root in that very workshop. Every day in the workshop was a new learning opportunity for Leonardo. His eyes were always eager to see more, and his hands wanted to create more. One day he'd be holding a brush, the next he'd be chiseling a sculpture, and another day he'd be examining a mechanical device. Verrocchio expanded the boundaries for this young genius, teaching him to be more than just a painter. He guided him to become a true artist. He helped Leonardo realize that art touches every area of life as a whole. During his years with Verrocchio, Leonardo learned everything there was to know about art, but that wasn't enough for him. He always wanted more. His mind was chasing both art and science. Human anatomy, the secrets of nature, machinery design. This curiosity took the education he received from Verrocchio to a whole new level. Leonardo was no longer just an apprentice, he was on his way to becoming a genius who would shape the future of art and science. Dear friends, this is how Leonardo's grand journey began. Under Verrocchio's guidance, he took his first steps into art while also planting the seeds of science. And those seeds would eventually blossom into works and inventions that would amaze the whole world. This was just the beginning. Leonardo had a long road ahead of him, and we will accompany him on this journey. Ah, my dear friends, we're diving even deeper into Leonardo's artistic journey. As the young Leonardo was growing under Verrocchio's guidance, he was slowly starting to be recognized in the art world. Whispers were floating through the streets of Florence. A new genius is being born. Yes, Leonardo was making a name for himself, but he wasn't just a painter or sculptor. There was a different spark in his eyes because with every brushstroke and every drawing, he was trying to unravel the secrets of nature. Take a look at one of his early works, the Annunciation. Ah, this painting. It depicts the moment when the angel Gabriel brings the good news to Mary, and you can immediately sense Leonardo's deep interest in nature. The angel's graceful hands, Mary's surprised expression. But do you know what stands out the most? The natural landscape in the background. Leonardo didn't just paint the figures, he captured nature itself on the canvas. The trees, flowers, the sky. Everything was so detailed that it felt like you were looking at a real world, not just a painting. Because Leonardo was trying to decode the language of nature, he wanted to understand how light refracted, how the leaves of a tree moved. He believed that without understanding these things, he couldn't create an accurate painting. Then there's St. Jerome in the wilderness. Ah, dear listeners, here's where another talent of Leonardo's shines through. His interest in anatomy. Just look at St. Jerome's body, the tension in the muscles, the weariness and pain in the body of an old man. Leonardo was striving to understand every curve of the human body. He was more than just a painter. This interest in anatomy wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about a desire to uncover the mysteries of the human body. He didn't just want to create an outer appearance, he wanted to know what was happening inside a body. My friends, for Leonardo, the human body was as fascinating as a work of art. During these years, as he started gaining recognition in Florence, he spent most of his time studying anatomy. Imagine back then, knowledge of anatomy was very limited. Very little was known about the internal structure of the human body. But Leonardo didn't settle for what was known. He studied various anatomy books and even went to hospitals to work on cadavers. Doing this at that time was incredibly radical. But Leonardo's curiosity was determined to push all boundaries. He wanted to learn how a muscle moved, how a bone was structured because, in his view, a painter couldn't draw a realistic figure without this knowledge. What about engineering? Leonardo's whirlwind of curiosity didn't just stop at anatomy. His mind was like a bridge between art and science. During his days in Florence, he wasn't just painting, he was also designing new machines and mechanical devices. My friends, in the narrow streets of Florence, one day he was painting, and the next day he was thinking about how to make a bridge more durable. One of his early inventions was bridge designs. He was not just a painter, he was also an engineering genius. Even back then, Da Vinci might have imagined that he would one day design war machines and flying devices. His mind was limitless. During this period, as he started gaining recognition in Florence, Leonardo's multifaceted intellect was now on everyone's lips. On one hand, he was awing people with his artworks, and on the other, he was steadily rising in the scientific world with his mechanical designs and anatomical studies. Florence was an artistic hub at that time, but Leonardo had a vision that extended beyond the city's borders. He always had his eyes set on the horizon, wanting to learn more and achieve more. He was on the path to becoming a pioneer, not only in art but also in science. Dear friends, this is how Leonardo began to shine like a star in the colorful world of Florence. But for him, this was just the beginning. His mind was always buzzing with new questions and goals. His eyes were always on the horizon, and his hands were always at work. Every piece he created during this time further revealed his greatness. And dear listeners, believe me, Leonardo's adventure doesn't end here. This genius has so much more to explore in art, science, and life. Now, let's take a closer look at his successes in Florence. My dear friends, now we're going to talk about a significant turning point in Leonardo's life. After years filled with art in Florence, he had set his sights on a much bigger stage. This genius who tried to blend art and science was no longer confined to the borders of Florence. His dreams were broader, his horizons further away. And at this point, his path led him to Milan, but this was not just a simple move. Going to Milan would almost change his destiny. There, he would enter the service of Ludovico Sforza, one of Italy's most powerful leaders, leaving his mark not only in art, but also in science and engineering. Milan was a city renowned for its wealth and power during that time. The Duke of the city, Ludovico Sforza, recognized Leonardo's talents and summoned him to his court. However, Leonardo was invited not just as a painter, but also as an engineer, a scientist, and a military advisor. Yes, friends, Leonardo's mind was not limited to paintings. He was designing machines, bridges, canals, and even weapons of war. When he arrived in Milan, he found tremendous opportunities to turn these dreams into reality. One of Leonardo's greatest projects in Milan was undoubtedly The Last Supper. Oh friends, when you stand before that masterpiece, it feels as if time stands still. That moment when Jesus and the apostles are together. It's not just a painting, it's almost a living scene. So what made this work so special? Leonardo had hidden profound meaning in the expression of each apostle. The tranquility in Jesus' final moments, Judas's betrayal-filled gaze. Everything was so vivid that every time you looked at the painting, you noticed a new detail. Because Leonardo didn't just depict, he had signed his name to the painting of emotions. But my friends, The Last Supper was not merely a work of art. The techniques used in this painting show just how innovative Leonardo was. He challenged the traditional methods used in frescoes of that time. He experimented with new techniques to make the colors brighter and the textures more realistic. The interesting part is that these new techniques carried significant risks at that time. It was this innovative approach that ultimately led to the painting's deterioration over time. However, Leonardo's aim was always to push boundaries and rewrite the rules of art. Of course, life in Milan was not limited to this painting. Leonardo always had more in mind. At Ludovico Sforza's court, he contemplated how the Duke could make the city greater and more powerful. He was designing new bridges, water canals, and defense systems for the city. Leonardo worked like an engineer, preparing plans for the city, building Milan's future. His scientific research also gained significant momentum during this period. He was constantly conducting new experiments, taking notes, and preparing drawings to understand how nature worked. These drawings were like a blueprint not only for that era, but also for the future. His drawings of water movement and notes trying to solve air currents. All of these were proof of just how advanced his mind was. But my friends, Leonardo's contributions were not only artistic and scientific. One of the tasks assigned to him by Ludovico Sforza was military engineering. At that time, Italy was caught in the midst of constant wars. Cities were developing defense mechanisms against one another and designing new weapons. And Leonardo showcased his genius in this field as well. He designed war machines, siege towers, and even armored vehicles for Sforza. When looking at Leonardo's drawings, you can almost see the first sketches of modern tanks. He understood that wars could be won not just with blood and swords, but with intelligence and technique. For this reason, he developed new machines for both attack and defense strategies. Dear friends, Leonardo was not just a painter or sculptor. He was a genius who showcased his brilliance across all these fields. During the years he spent in Milan, every drawing he made, every project he undertook offered a glimpse into the depths of his mind. Every bridge he sketched, every machine he designed, was a herald of the future. Leonardo's thoughts were far ahead of not only his time, but even today. In Milan, Leonardo pushed the boundaries of art, rewrote the rules of science, and made revolutionary contributions to engineering. The years he spent in the service of Ludovico Sforza were not only the years when a city was built, but also when a genius was forged. But friends, remember, for Leonardo, no success was ever enough. His eyes were always set further ahead, his mind reaching for higher heights, and the adventure of this great genius was far from over. His name would echo on every page of history, etching itself into the peaks of art and science. Oh, what a remarkable man Leonardo was. My friends. Now I'll take you into one of Leonardo's deepest fascinations, his studies on the human body. It's where he combined art and science, merging human and nature in a single flow. For Leonardo, the human body wasn't just muscles and bones. He saw the body as a work of art, trying to understand every part of it. But he didn't just want to understand it, he wanted to dissect it perfectly. You see, he believed that the perfect functioning of nature was hidden within the human body. Leonardo's deep interest in anatomy began during his early years in Florence. However, during his time in Milan, this interest grew into a full-blown passion. Imagine this, it wasn't uncommon for an artist to study anatomy, but Leonardo took it to a whole new level. He wasn't just looking at the human body as a piece of beauty, but as a machine. How do muscles work? How do bones move? How do organs function? To answer these questions, Leonardo dissected countless human cadavers. Yes, such studies were extremely difficult at that time, perhaps even dangerous. But Leonardo, driven by his hunger for knowledge, didn't let anything stop him. And then came the fruit of his studies, the Vitruvian Man. Friends, this drawing isn't just a piece of art. It's a manifesto of thought, a masterpiece showing Leonardo's genius at its purest. So what exactly is the Vitruvian Man? In this figure, a human body is drawn to fit both a square and a circle, symbolizing the perfect harmony between man and nature. Leonardo created this figure, inspired by the writings of the Roman architect Vitruvius. It demonstrates how man is at the center of the universe, showing how the proportions of the human body align with the workings of nature. This drawing, where each part of the body is connected to the golden ratio, reflects Leonardo's deep philosophy about the world and the universe. But friends, for Leonardo, these studies weren't just about drawing. He was trying to understand how every detail functioned. The chambers of the heart, the workings of the lungs, the way muscles contract and relax. Leonardo didn't just observe, he understood. His interest in anatomy was so profound that it sheds light even on modern medicine. And he showed this in his drawings with such clarity that when you look at his notebooks, it feels like you're reading a modern anatomy book. By solving the workings of nature, Leonardo saw humans as part of this grand order. Of course, Leonardo's interest wasn't limited to the human body. His mind was always chasing new inventions and discoveries. The more he understood the perfect mechanics of the human body, the more he tried to apply these mechanisms in machines and technological designs. He left behind many invention drafts that still leave us in awe today. Leonardo designed machines for flight. Yes, flight, my friends. When you consider that flying was just a dream at that time, you can better grasp the scope of Leonardo's genius. He studied birds' wings, trying to figure out how they flew in nature, and then he designed his own flying machines. While these machines couldn't achieve flight back then, Leonardo had opened the door to the future. And that was just the beginning. Machines to harness the power of water, vehicles that could move on both land and water, even submarine designs. If you look at Leonardo's notebooks, you'll find ideas far beyond his time. He was like a sage who could see the future. His drawings of tanks, armored vehicles, and massive catapults gave clues about how warfare technology would evolve. Leonardo understood that wars weren't just won with brute strength, but with intelligence and technology. But this genius also aimed to serve humanity. He believed that science and technology could improve human life. That's why he designed canal systems to bring clean water to cities, plans to create better conditions for hospitals, and machines to increase efficiency in agriculture. Leonardo's mind never stopped. He always sought to learn more, to understand more. And that, my dear friends, is why Leonardo da Vinci was not just an artist, he was also a scientist, an engineer, a philosopher, and an inventor. While trying to understand the workings of the human body, he was, in fact, striving to unlock the secrets of nature and the universe. And through this deep passion, he immortalized himself in both the worlds of art and science. Each of his drawings, each of his designs was a masterpiece that showed how far human beings could go in both art and science. Leonardo sought to understand the grand order of nature of which we are all a part. For him, the human body was not just a model, but a small reflection of the universe. By pursuing this reflection, he became a genius far ahead of his time, and even of ours. Ah, dear friends. Now let me take you to a pivotal moment in Leonardo's life, his journey back to Florence after leaving Milan. Time passes, eras change, but Leonardo's mind kept racing, always searching for new and creative ways that had never been explored before. When Leonardo returned to Florence, he was no longer just seen as an artist, but as a sage, a genius, and a visionary. His name echoed through the streets. People were curious about his works, his stories. But Leonardo was a quiet man. He observed, designed new projects, and crafted deep meanings that he wanted to convey through his art. His greatest achievement during this period was undoubtedly starting the creation of one of history's most famous paintings, Mona Lisa. Mona Lisa. That enigmatic woman has captivated people for centuries and still does, doesn't she? When Leonardo created the Mona Lisa, he wasn't satisfied with just painting a portrait. No, dear friends. With this masterpiece, he sought to unravel the human soul, that mysterious smile. Have you noticed it too? One moment she seems happy, the next deep in thought, maybe a bit melancholic, perhaps hiding a secret. Leonardo's brush didn't just play with colors, it played with emotions and thoughts. Mona Lisa's eyes seemed to follow you wherever you go. This was no accident, of course. Leonardo used light and shadow to portray Mona Lisa as if she were alive. For centuries, people have tried to understand that smile. Some saw it as an expression of happiness. Others saw deep sadness in her eyes. But the truth is, with this work, Leonardo painted the complexity of the human soul. Can you imagine how much time he spent on this painting? Leonardo never rushed. To him, every detail, every brushstroke had to be perfect. His genius wasn't just in portraiture, he was like a philosopher, trying to understand the human soul, the depths of nature, the mysteries of life. That's why the Mona Lisa is not just a work of art, but a lesson in wisdom. It makes you think, makes you question, and draws you in. But Leonardo's achievements during this time weren't limited to the Mona Lisa, no, friends. His talent and genius were so vast that this artist was always creating new masterpieces. Another one of his incredible works from this period, though sadly not fully preserved today, was the Battle of Anghiari fresco. This massive mural was painted on the walls of Florence's Palazzo Vecchio. It depicted a grand scene of soldiers and horses in the midst of battle. The chaos of war, the violence, and humanity's struggle were immortalized by Leonardo's brush. Yet, this fresco too fell victim to Leonardo's endless pursuit of perfection. The experimental painting techniques he used caused the work to deteriorate over time. But regardless, the Battle of Anghiari showed once again the depth of Leonardo's art and how he captured human emotions in every tiny detail. In this battle scene, it wasn't just a clash. The complexity of human nature was on full display. The fury of the swords, the desperation of the people, bravery and fear. All these emotions were combined in his art. The Florence of those days resonated with this work. Unfortunately, the fresco didn't survive completely, but even the remaining sketches give us a glimpse of what Leonardo achieved with this masterpiece. Let's not forget that when Leonardo returned to Florence, he wasn't just focused on art. He was also designing new projects for the city, working on architectural structures, and chasing scientific discoveries. Because for Leonardo da Vinci, art and science were parts of the same whole. To him, the world wasn't limited to what we could see with our eyes. He pushed the limits of the human mind, trying to uncover the deeper secrets of nature and humanity. So, dear friends, Leonardo's return to Florence wasn't just an artist coming home. It was also a period where a genius reached the peak of his creativity. His works weren't just brushstrokes. Each one told a story, shedding light on the history of humanity. To lose yourself in Mona Lisa's gaze or to feel the terror in the Battle of Anghiari is to fall under the spell of Leonardo's genius. And all of this came to life in the mind of that great sage. Leonardo da Vinci wasn't just an artist, he was one of humanity's greatest explorers. When we look at his works, we don't just see colors and lines, we embark on a journey into the depths of the human soul. That's why, my friends, every brushstroke, every piece of Leonardo's work speaks to us from beyond time, because he wasn't just a light of his age, but a beacon for all time. Rome, the heart of history and culture, once the center of the world. When Leonardo da Vinci stepped foot into this magnificent city toward the end of his life, he had reached the pinnacle of his genius not just as an artist, but as a visionary mind. His years in Rome were marked by a deepening of his brilliance, a time when his relentless passion for discovery never waned. Now, close your eyes and imagine, among the protective walls of the Vatican, in those glorious days when geniuses and artists walked the streets and grand projects were being conceived. Leonardo was continuing to unravel the mysteries of the world around him. When he arrived in Rome in 1513, he began working under the patronage of Pope Leo X. This gave him great freedom and new opportunities. But dear friends, Rome was more than just a city. It was a place of great competition, where brilliant minds were constantly in a race against one another. Working at the same time as giants like Raphael and Michelangelo must have increased the pressure on Leonardo. Yet, even amidst this competition, he quietly and diligently carried on his work as he always had. Leonardo's years in Rome were not just filled with artistic achievements, they were brimming with scientific and engineering endeavors. You see, my friends, for Leonardo, art and science were never separate. To him, science was an art form, and art was a way to understand the natural world. That's why during his time in Rome, he was not only focused on painting but also deeply involved in intricate engineering designs. His concepts were so ahead of their time that even today, they would leave us in awe. During this period, Leonardo became particularly interested in mechanical inventions. In his mind, he wasn't just creating artworks, but also envisioning technologies that could benefit humanity. While in Rome, he sketched designs for everything from military engineering projects to water canal systems and city infrastructure. He even tried to design flying machines and underwater vehicles, ideas far beyond the capabilities of his time. Most of Leonardo's designs remained on paper due to the technological limitations of the era, but what mattered most was what this genius was thinking. His imagination was ahead of its time. Imagine him walking through the wide streets of Rome, trying to bring a new idea to life as it flashed before his eyes. He wasn't just seeing the world as it was, he was pushing the boundaries of human understanding, both physically and mentally. For example, it's known that Leonardo worked on machines powered by water. In his eyes, water wasn't just a natural resource, it was a powerful source of energy. Rome, and particularly the vast projects within the Vatican, gave him a broad field for exploration. He developed engineering solutions to control the flow of rivers and prevent floods. Nature was his greatest teacher, and as he unraveled its mysteries, he believed he could make the world a better place. Of course, Rome wasn't just a place for engineering and inventions. Leonardo's passion for art deepened during his time in the city as well. He became part of the scientific and artistic circles within the Vatican, but he also felt a certain distance between himself and the other artists in Rome. Working in the same city as Michelangelo and Raphael must have been inspiring, but it also may have made him feel somewhat isolated. Leonardo had always thought differently from others. His approach to art and science was sometimes beyond the understanding of those around him. Yet he was undeterred and continued on his path at his own pace. Another aspect of Leonardo's work that gained attention in Rome was his fascination with anatomy. The mysteries of the human body were among his greatest research interests during these years. He didn't just paint the human form, he sought to understand its internal structure. The skeletal system, muscles, organs, he meticulously studied and immortalized them in his drawings. These studies contributed greatly to both the art world and the scientific community. In the scientific and artistic debates that took place in the Vatican, Leonardo was able to share his knowledge on these subjects as well. But my friends, these years in Rome were not just filled with triumphs for Leonardo. During his time in the great city, his health gradually began to decline. Still, he never gave up. He continued to push forward with every project, every sketch, every idea he had. To him, life was a journey of discovery. His time in Rome, spent immersed in art and science, might have been when the greatest storms were brewing in his mind. Yet, Leonardo never stopped striving to make the world a better place. And so, my dear friends, Leonardo da Vinci's years in Rome were not just the story of an artist, but of a philosopher, a scientist, and a genius. The debates, drawings, and projects that took place within the walls of the Vatican during that time elevated his brilliance to another level. This period in Rome can be seen as one of the peak moments in the intellectual journey of one of the greatest minds in history. My dear friends, the final years of one's life are often a time for deep reflection, a journey into the most profound corners of the soul. For Leonardo da Vinci, it was no different. After a long and fulfilling life, his last chapter led him to France, where he would spend his final years under the care of King Francis I. So, let me take you on this journey, as we immerse ourselves in the closing moments of the great genius's life. It was 1516. After those intense years spent in Florence, Milan, and Rome, Leonardo left Italy behind when he accepted the invitation of King Francis I of France. The young king was in awe of Leonardo's brilliance and saw it as a great honor to bring him to his court, both for himself and for his kingdom. By this time, Leonardo was an older man, but his mind remained youthful, filled with the same curiosity and desire to explore. When Leonardo arrived in France, King Francis showed his admiration in the grandest way. He placed him in a beautiful residence, Clause-Luce, nestled along the banks of the Loire River, just a stone's throw from the Château d'Amboise. It's said that the king often visited him there, even referring to Leonardo as father during their deep conversations. And it was in this quiet and serene setting of Clause-Luce that Leonardo turned his attention to his final great projects. But dear friends, the years had taken their toll on Leonardo's body. Yes, his brilliant mind was still active and creative, but his health was deteriorating. His right hand had become paralyzed, making it difficult for him to paint like he used to. Yet his spirit showed its strength once again. Unable to use his right hand, Leonardo simply switched to his left, continuing to write and draw. Such was his determination, no obstacle could ever stand in his way. During his time at Clause-Luce, Leonardo focused on many of his final projects. As always, he was combining art and science, exploring the design of hydraulic systems to control the flow of water. He was not only an artist or sculptor, but also an engineer, architect, and inventor. These projects caught the attention of the king, especially in matters of water distribution for cities and irrigation for agriculture. But many of Leonardo's ideas remained on paper, as his health limited how much he could do. Though his time in France may seem like a period of less productivity, Leonardo's mind remained revolutionary. He continued to share his thoughts on humanity's future, his scientific discoveries, and his artistic vision. For example, his studies on human anatomy persisted. The sketches he made, aiming to unravel the complexities of the human body, would continue to enlighten the scientific world long after his death. He didn't just observe the surface of humanity, he sought to understand it deeply. Each muscle, each bone was a puzzle, and Leonardo never stopped trying to solve them. In those final years, Leonardo shifted his focus from painting to knowledge, understanding, and teaching. It's said that he and King Francis engaged in long discussions about the impact of science and art on humanity. The king deeply respected him, seeing him not just as an artist but as a sage, a man unraveling the mysteries of the universe. And in the eyes of the young king, Leonardo could see how he was leaving behind a legacy that would endure for generations to come. My dear friends, close your eyes and imagine that moment. The year is 1519, it's springtime, and in the lush greenery of France, there's a house in Clause-Luce. Inside, perhaps the greatest genius in history is about to take his last breath. Leonardo da Vinci, yes, on May 2nd, 1519, this extraordinary man closed his eyes for the last time. But friends, don't think of that day as just another day of passing, because that moment wasn't simply the end of a life, but the beginning of a genius's journey into eternity. Every moment, every breath of Leonardo's life was a gift to the world. His creativity, curiosity, and passion for discovery were like an endless sea, boundless and infinite. In France, under the patronage of King Francis I, Leonardo spent his final years, and even though his body was growing weak, his mind was as sharp and powerful as ever. Legend has it that King Francis was so fond of Leonardo that he saw him not only as a friend but as a wise mentor. And even at that final moment, King Francis was there, holding Leonardo's hand, witnessing his departure. But friends, never forget this, true geniuses never die. Leonardo da Vinci may have left this world, but the work's ideas, inventions, and dreams, it did live on. This great genius who bridged the worlds of painting, engineering, anatomy, and architecture remains a beacon of inspiration for humanity. Today, when we look back, masterpieces like Mona Lisa and the Laser Last Supper are not only landmarks in art history, but turning points for humankind itself. Think of the Mona Lisa, those eyes, that mysterious smile. For centuries, people have tried to understand and uncover the secrets of that painting. But perhaps Leonardo's greatest achievement was embedding such deep soul and mystery into his work. But friends, Leonardo wasn't just a painter. The legacy he left behind wasn't confined to paintings. His passion for science, especially his work in anatomy, significantly contributed to the advancement of medicine and better scientific understanding. Ruvian man, that drawing, It perfectly captures the symmetry and mathematical proportions of the human body and is one of the finest examples of how scientific thought and art can come together. Leonardo's detailed anatomical sketches revolutionized how we understand the human body. At a time when examining the human body so boldly was a daring act, Leonardo pushed the boundaries, friends. He always sought to go beyond. His contributions to the world of science didn't stop at anatomy. Leonardo was also a visionary in engineering and mechanics. His designs were so ahead of their time that it's like he could see into the future. Take his flying machine designs, for example. Leonardo dreamed of the day when humans would soar through the skies. Many of the technologies we use today were first sketched out by him. When you look at his mechanical inventions, bridge designs, and underwater diving equipment, you witness how a single person could embody both the spirit of an artist and an engineer. Leonardo showed us that creativity cannot be confined to a single field, that science and art are inseparable. And what about the legacy he left for the future, my friends? That's the real point. Leonardo's impact wasn't just through his works, but through his thoughts and imagination that shaped the future. Can we even talk about the world of science today without mentioning his name? Leonardo became a symbol of humanity's power to learn, explore, and innovate. Galileo Galilei, Isaac Newton, Nikola Tesla, Thomas Edison, these great minds followed the path Leonardo had paved. In the world of art, his understanding of perspective and anatomy shaped the evolution of artistic expression. His legacy reminded us once again of the limitless potential of the human mind. When we look at Leonardo's long-lasting influence on science and engineering, are we still following in his footsteps today? Even in the development of aviation technology, his vision played a role. From bridge designs to hydroelectric power plants, Leonardo laid the groundwork for so many innovations. Over the centuries, his ideas evolved, transformed, and inspired modern technology. But friends, perhaps Leonardo's greatest triumph was his curiosity. Yes, Leonardo da Vinci showed the world the power of curiosity. Whether it was art, science, or engineering, he always wanted to know more, to dig deeper. And that curiosity became the driving force behind human progress. His creativity and boundless imagination taught us to keep searching for more. Those who came after him followed this great genius's example, leading to new discoveries and ideas. So, my dear friends, with Leonardo da Vinci's death, an era may have ended, but his legacy, his vision, his spirit still lives among us. The works he left behind have left indelible marks on human history. For centuries, this great genius has illuminated the paths of art, science, and engineering, and he still lives on in our hearts and minds. Leonardo's spirit will continue to live on in every person who approaches life with curiosity and discovery. Dear friends, as we gather around the fire, I'm filled with joy to share once again a deep insight into the life of Leonardo da Vinci. Now, as we approach the end of this unforgettable journey, I want to take a moment to reflect together on the essence of this great genius's life and the lessons we can learn from him. Leonardo wasn't just an artist, he was a thinker, a scientist, and an inventor. His life symbolizes the curiosity and desire for exploration that exists within each of us. Remember, every moment, every piece of art, every invention in Leonardo's life was part of his effort to understand the world and make it a better place. By studying nature and humanity, he showed how everything is interconnected. Nature inspired him, and it fed his art. He taught us that art and science are inseparable. In each of his works, you can see a deep perspective and a creative mind at work. The smile of the Mona Lisa has captured hearts for centuries, while the Last Supper carries a spiritual depth and emotion that deeply impacts those who gaze upon it. But beyond all these masterpieces, Leonardo's greatest legacy is the people who knew him and were inspired by him. For centuries, geniuses nourished by his ideas walked his path and opened new horizons for humanity. At this point, dear friends, you must ask yourself a question. What can I take away from this genius's legacy? Leonardo was a living example of curiosity, determination, and a passion for lifelong learning. Integrating these values into your life might just be one of his greatest gifts. Curiosity is humanity's greatest driving force. Every new challenge we face today presents itself as an opportunity to learn. Like him, be bold, push boundaries, dream big, and don't be afraid to make new discoveries. In this final section of our video, I want you to set off with everything you've thought about Leonardo da Vinci's life. Take his life as a guide, always seek more in art, science, and life itself. Remember, what you learn and discover throughout your life can shine a light not just for yourself, but also for those around you in the world. Now, let's all keep Leonardo's spirit alive. He was not only a painter or scientist, but also a guide contributing to humanity's evolution. We too have the potential to change the world with our imagination by following in his footsteps. Let's never lose our curiosity and creativity. In conclusion, dear friends, Leonardo da Vinci's life isn't just the story of a man who once existed. It's the story of a genius shaping the future of humanity. The works and ideas he left behind continue to shine a light beyond time. So let's keep building the future together to honor the memory of this great genius. Thank you for listening, dear friends. I look forward to meeting again in other stories in the future.